Hello, I am David Sangree, and I'm the president of Hotel and Leisure Advisors. I'm a hospitality consultant, and we specialize in analyzing water parks, water park resorts, hotels, golf courses, and other leisure properties. I've been analyzing water parks and water park resorts for over 2 decades and have done studies on many of the newer and most exciting water park projects in the United States and Canada, such as the Great Wolf Lodge, Kalahari, Typhoon, Texas, the proposed water parks at the Mall of America, and others. And today we're going to be talking about the methodology for doing feasibility studies for water parks and water park resorts. I went to Cornell University and have a background in studying real estate uses as I'm an MAI and also a CPA. And the feasibility studies are something that we have done regularly, and I've actually done over 3,000 of them throughout North America. As you listen to and watch this presentation, I encourage you to download the article PDF that I wrote for the World Water Park Association's Development and Expansion Guide entitled Methodology of Water Park Feasibility Studies. That way you can make notes on the article as we go through this session, and the link is on this slide. It's also under our Publications tab of our company website. So what is the purpose of a feasibility study? The purpose is really to determine if a proposed new development or expansion project is financially feasible. So is it a project that will work, will attract enough attendance and usage to be able to pay back any potential debt service, as well as pay the developer a fair rate of return? So the feasibility studies are usually hired because either the developer or an investor, a lender, or the government wants to know what would be the return on this facility. Would it work? How many visitors would it attract? How many occupied rooms would the hotel achieve? And the overall, people have a desire to know before they spend a lot of money doing the new development. So the purpose of this study is to determine through a discounted cash flow analysis what kind of evaluation the projected returns would generate and compare that to the cost to build it. And if the valuation through the projected returns exceeds the cost, that means it's feasible. As part of a feasibility study, we will frequently provide recommendations and analysis concerning what to build. So many times clients will come to us with some vague ideas about wanting to do a water park resort project, but not know what types of amenities and facilities it should have. And in those cases, we'll make recommendations as to what kinds of, how large and the hotel and what square footage of different components there should be. Other times, the client will have a detailed list of projections and sizing. And our job is to just give some recommendations that perhaps may improve the project's financial results. So the major components of a feasibility study are the items listed on this slide. The first is looking at the area, demographic, and neighborhood analysis. That is a review of what is occurring in the neighborhood, how many people live there, and what is happening in the broader region. We also do a detailed look at the site. Different sites are better for certain projects than others. So we look at things like transportation and access, exposure, the existing scenery, whether there's enough acreage. We consider the proposed developments, facilities, and make recommendations and determine the projected range of costs for the project. We do a detailed market analysis that could include both the hotel market and the water park market by looking at existing performance levels of hotels and water parks in that community and the region, as well as the country. We then determine the projected development's usage and pricing analysis to come up with projected revenues for the project. Next is a financial analysis, doing a 10-year discounted cash flow analysis for the project, which is then used to determine its feasibility through a discounted cash flow analysis and make a comparison to the projected cost. So in the rest of our 30 minutes or so seminar, we're going to go through each of these major components to help educate you as to how the process of doing a feasibility study and some of the highlights. So let's start with the area review. So in an area review, one wants to look at the population trends for both the community that the project is located in, perhaps the county, the MSA or statistical area, the state, and perhaps a larger region, and see what are the trends in population. Is it trending upward? Is there a lot of growth? Is it going downward? Is the area shrinking? In both cases, a new project or an expansion project can be possible, but it depends as to what effect it would have on that area. If it's a growing community, you could add a new project, and the existing projects could also continue to work along with the new project. If it's a shrinking area, if you develop a new project, many times one of the existing projects would end up closing. So it would kind of cause a shift in the demand. We look heavily at the number of families with children within driving distance of the property, because families with children are the #1 demographic for a water park or water park resort development. And what is the growth in the number of households that's occurring? And then the economics of those households are very important. So in a market that has higher household income figures, the ability to charge higher prices is reasonable, that you can assume a higher level of pricing. While for a market that has lower pricing or lower income levels, then you are forced to charge lower prices if your potential demand is from that local area. Now, in the case of a water park resort, you can be located in an area with lower income levels if your goal is to attract people from outside that area who are going to come there for their vacation. An example is the Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, where there are many properties in that location, but the household income of the Wisconsin Dells area is below the national average. But many of the visitors coming to the Wisconsin Dells are coming from Chicago and Minneapolis and Milwaukee and Madison, where the income levels are higher than the national average. Next, we look at the area economics. Who are the major employers in the area? Is it a tourist area or more of a business area? What are some new projects going on? Are there any new attractions being developed? Are there new companies coming in? And lastly, we consider the transportation issues. What is the highway infrastructure? Are there interstate highways that can get you to the location easily? Is there an nearby airport or train service? Are there any plans for new roads or bridges that will enhance the highway infrastructure? So these are some of the components that would be considered in the area review and demographics. Now, the next major item we'll talk about is the site review. So the sites, when we are doing a site review for an indoor water park resort, most people are coming and staying overnight. So we look at a 3-hour drive time from the subject site, or about 180 miles, and we make comparisons between that site and other comparable properties that are currently operating to see how our demographics compare to a successfully operating property in another part of the country, or another country if this is in a smaller country. For an outdoor water park, we will look at within a 1-hour drive, because most people going to a standalone outdoor water park are not staying overnight because there's no hotel right there. Now, they may be staying at some nearby hotels. But we'll look most heavily at people within a 1-hour drive, and then separately consider guests staying at area hotels. So the site visibility and access are important for a water park or water park resort. If the site is more visible from a busy highway, that gives it a lot of free marketing. But on the other side of the coin, it makes it noisy. So one has to determine what's more important. If it's an indoor water park resort, then having the visibility can be more important because there's a building around it, so it wouldn't be as noisy. But if it's an outdoor facility, obviously the noise can affect things. And what is the access from the area highways? If it's not right off the interstate, but is it relatively easy to direct people to get to the location? What are some of the nearby tourist attractions and amenities near the site? Is there any shopping or other attractions nearby? Are there other reasons why people might come there? For example, in the Poconos, we've seen a number of water park resorts develop, and part of that is because there's a couple ski hills there, as well as some state parks and other. There's a big shopping center and other reasons why people visit there. And another major issue is the government and whether the government would offer any municipal incentives. So in some locations, the government will offer some tax abatements or other types of tax rebates, while in other locations they will offer more quick zoning approvals. But there are certainly some locations where the government is not so excited about having a large project develop, and they will make zoning difficult. So knowing this in advance will help you in your analysis. Now, the demographic comparison is, this chart provides an example for an indoor water park resort. And in this example, we've compared the Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, and Sandusky, Ohio, to the example city. So these two locations have the greatest concentrations of indoor water park resorts in the United States. And you can see from the chart that there's about 4.3 million people in Wisconsin Dells, and I'm sorry, not just people, these are family households. So there's 4.3 million family households who live within a 180-mile radius around the Wisconsin Dells, and 6.5 million around Sandusky. Our example city has about 4.2 million. So the number of family households is slightly lower. However, the number of actual existing indoor water park properties is only 2 in the example market of the 180-mile ring, while the Wisconsin Dells has 35 and Sandusky has 13. So we've compared the actual number of rooms at each of these locations in these water park resort properties and determined that the example location has a superior number of family households per indoor water park hotel room as compared to the existing properties in Wisconsin Dells and Sandusky. So this doesn't tell you that it's going to be feasible. It just provides a data point as a kind of a box to check to say, hey, this indicates there's a possibility here that a water park resort could work. Now for outdoor water parks, we do something similar. Well, we'll compare the proposed location and the demographics around a 1-hour radius to other water park properties and what kind of demographics they offer around their locations. This chart shows the number of outdoor water parks in the United States and Canada and the total population, and determines the number of residents per water park. And it's just a helpful way to look at which parts of the North America have perhaps better opportunities than others, as this indicates that the Midwest has the lowest number of residents per water park, while the Canada has the highest number, indicating that potentially Canada would have the most opportunity. However, it's also potentially colder there. So one has to compare the climate and the available population to the number of available facilities. Next, we'll look at the proposed facility and what are the initial plans and what kinds of recommendations might we make based upon our experience in analyzing these types of properties. So I've analyzed done studies on over 3,000 hospitality projects, including over 700 water park projects throughout North America and a little bit internationally. And by doing all these studies, we've seen what projects work and don't work so well. And the items we would be looking at is, what should the size be? So sometimes developers will plan an example as an indoor water park or an outdoor water park. They may initially plan it a little too small, not realizing that you need to be big enough to create an attraction that people are going to want to visit. We also look at the branding. Should the property be branded with a national hotel flag, or if it's an outdoor water park facility, should it be with a well-known flag like a Wet n Wild, or would it have its own identity, being an independent property? What kinds of amenities should it have? These could include things such as a spa, food and restaurants, bars, retail outlets, family entertainment center, parking garage. Those would be just some examples. Having a theme is very important for a water park because guests going to a water park are there for fun, usually for leisure reasons. And when you're away on vacation, even if it's just for the day, you still want to feel like you're in someplace different. So having a theme to your water park resort or water park is very important to make it a more exciting destination and allow you to charge a little higher prices. And then what is the development cost for the project? So this, at the stage that the feasibility study is done, usually a formal development budget is not yet prepared, but we would prepare a kind of a range of development costs, and that would help the developer understand if the project has a potential for being feasible. And if not, obviously then they would know to not spend any more time and money on it. But if it does, then they would get more detailed costing from hiring a firm to do that. Now, next is the market analysis, which is really the most important component of a feasibility study. So there's two kinds of market analysis that are performed. One is on the hotel market, and a separate one is on the water park market. So for the hotel market, we look at who are the hotel competitors in the market. So if your project is being developed in a community that doesn't have any nearby indoor water park resorts, there still are existing hotels that leisure guests might stay at or groups might stay at that are in a way competitors with your proposed project. And we identify who those are, interview managers at each of those properties, and determine what their occupancy, ADR, number of fill days, and market segmentation is for each of the properties. We'll also hire an STR lodging trend report on the competitive set, and that will provide us monthly and daily data concerning the performance of that group of competitors. Next, we'll look at the indoor water park resorts, and they may be a much broader regional set of indoor water park resorts if there's nothing nearby. And those we do the same thing, trying to determine their performance levels and how successful they are. We also will do a demographic analysis against those indoor water park resorts compared to our location to see if our location has good demographics for this proposed development. We always want to look at what are some recent hotel openings and any proposed hotel openings that might be comparable or compete with our proposed project. And we'll look at the market segmentation and market penetration of these competitors that we're analyzing. So a normal hotel will attract demand from three major segments. They include the business traveler, leisure traveler, and groups. So for an indoor water park resort, most of your demand would come from the group and leisure segments, and less so from the business segment. So we want to make sure that this area could support those types of leisure and group guests. We'll then make projections of performance for the market. Now, I just want to give you some statistics on the U.S. lodging performance. In 2019, the United States achieved an occupancy of 66.1% with an average daily rate of $131. Now, as a comparison, 10 larger destination indoor water park resorts in the United States achieved an occupancy of 76.4% with an ADR of $247. So their performance level was much better than the US performance overall. Now, there are other water park resorts that we've studied that have lower performance levels than these 10, but these show you just how these properties can achieve strong numbers that are in excess of the average hotel. In these cases, the average daily rate includes usage of the water park. So it's both the room rate and the tickets to the water park, so that's not a separate admission. Now, at the same time, or if we're doing a water park only study, we will do a similar analysis of the water park market. So who are the existing and potential competitors for the water park? And these may include both indoor and outdoor facilities. Again, we'll want to interview managers at each of these properties and determine what is their attendance. Who is their market segmentation? Do they get people? Are they mostly season pass holders? Do they get many overnight guests? Are they people locally just coming for the day? And what is their average pricing? And what types of per capita spending are they achieving? So we compile charts where we fill in information about each of these comparable properties. And obviously the attendance is the most important number to determine what is their attendance. So for these most competitive properties, we'll compare the demographics within a perhaps 60-mile or 60-minute drive around the subject property with the same demographics around the comparable properties. And that will help us determine if the subject area could support a property and help us look at what kind of attendance might be appropriate for the subject site. Also look very much at the amenities of the competitors. So I wouldn't want to put as a competitor a property with only 2 slides if I was going to be building a property with 30 slides. So I want to pick comparable properties that have somewhat similar numbers of attractions, unless it's just located right next door, that it's important to look at something a bit smaller or larger. And I will want to consider what is the pricing for the different ticket prices and season passes at the water parks. Now, this chart provides information from the Themed Entertainment, the TEA Index, Themed Entertainment Association. They have been publishing this index for many years, and this gives the top 20 water parks in the United States their estimated attendance. They have similar charts for different parts of the world in this index. As you can see, the properties in Orlando achieve a much higher attendance than properties in the rest of the country. And this is primarily because the ones in Orlando are open nearly year-round, while the rest of the country are open between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And so their season is much shorter. These top 20 water parks just give us an idea as to a potential range of usage for a water park if you're going to build something large and elaborate. Now, if you're doing something smaller, then obviously the numbers would be probably below this, but that's all part of the feasibility studies to determine that. Now, Hotel Leisure Advisors has been tracking the water park industry for the past 15 years, and I have been tracking it for an additional 5 to 10 years before that. And we have the largest database of information about water parks of any consulting firm in North America. There are currently 1,144 existing water parks in North America as of September, and the majority of these are outdoor, and about a quarter of them were indoor facilities. Now, the Midwest boasts the largest number of indoor water parks, while the South has the largest number of outdoor water parks, with the Midwest close behind. The South offers fewer indoor water parks, indicating potential opportunity just because there are fewer competitors there. The Northeast has the fewest number of outdoor water parks and the fewest combined resort and standalone indoor water parks, indicating potential opportunity. The majority of outdoor water parks are municipal, and what that means is they're owned by a governmental agency, many times a park district, but sometimes just a community may own the water park. So the Midwest has the most municipal outdoor water parks, as there are many park districts who've chosen to build water parks, and it's just less common in other parts of the country. Now, after doing a thorough market analysis, one should then analyze the potential usage and pricing for the water park project. And this would be, there are two different methods here. One if it's a water park resort, and one if it's a standalone water park. So first we'll talk about the water park resorts. So in doing the water park resorts, we're going to analyze the occupancy and average daily rate of the competitive properties that we profiled in the market section. Again, those would include properties in the local area as well as a broader regional area. And the broader regional ones would be ones with amenities that are much more similar to what we're proposing to do. We also like to do demand interviews with potential customers and groups to find out what kind of pricing and usage levels they might have if this property were built, and how much interest they might have in it. We come up with what is going to be a projected occupancy and average daily rate for the hotel for a 5 to 10 year period. And similar with the water park, what kind of attendance will it achieve from hotel guests, from day passes, and from any other potential guests that might come. We'll make projections of performance for the future based upon this data and information we've collected from the comparable properties, STR, and our own interviews. Now, if I'm doing a study for a standalone outdoor water park or a standalone indoor water park, I'll be looking at the data I've collected from my competitive set of other water parks and considering their usage numbers and their average ticket prices and per capita spending in order to come up with projected attendance for my subject facility that I'm studying. And this would include determining how many season pass holders there'll be, and how many day passes, and how many guests from overnight lodging, how many overnight visitors might come to the park who maybe are staying at area hotels and would just enjoy a day at the water park. I'll also be considering what facilities we'll be offering, because it tends to be that facilities with more slides and more attractions are able to achieve higher pricing and higher attendance than those that are smaller. I will consider what is the climate in the area. So the climate directly affects how many days open. So, some water parks are open 80 days a year, others 100 days, 110 days, and then places like Orlando, they can be open 300 days a year or up to the whole year. So the climate as well as your school schedule affects these directly. Now, after determining the usage levels, we'll then do a detailed financial analysis. So this will include coming up with gross revenues for the property by department. So that would include the departments of rooms, water park admissions, food and beverage, retail, family entertainment center, if you have a spa, rentals and other income, maybe parking revenue. So you want to consider each of these departments separately. Now, our firm has a database of financial statements of other hotels and water parks that we've studied throughout North America and internationally a bit. And so we're able to use those financial statements to see what have other properties actually achieved in coming up with the projected revenues and expenses for the subject property that we're studying. And similarly, there are some industry standards that we consider, including reports by CBRE, STR, and IAPA, that are very helpful in looking at groupings of properties. Next, we'll look at the different expense departments. So there's the different departmental expenses for the revenue departments I just mentioned, as well as there's the undistributed and fixed departments that could include administrative and general, marketing, maintenance, utilities, management fees, real estate taxes, insurance, and reserve for replacement. So after coming up with the total revenues and the total expenses, we are able to determine the net operating income. And we will calculate this for a 10-year projection period. Now, using the results from this financial analysis, which would include, again, looking at comparable actual results from comparable properties, we will do a discounted cash flow analysis by using an industry discount rate and terminal capitalization rate to come up with a valuation for the property. So this would be done for both a new construction and an expansion. And in the case of a new construction, we will be determining its valuation by taking the sum of the discounted future net income and then assuming that the property would sell in the 11th year and discounting that sale price back to the present and adding the sum of the cash flow plus the sum of the reversionary sale price to equal the potential value. And then we're going to compare that value to the projected cost to build. Now, this is going to tell us if the new development or expansion is justified. So if a new development, how does the valuation through the discounted cash flow analysis compare with the proposed development budget that should really include an entrepreneurial profit? That's really the profit to the developer to justify doing the project. Now, if it's an expansion, we like to do a discounted cash flow analysis under two scenarios. Under one scenario, we'll analyze the valuation of the property assuming it's expanded, and under the other scenario, we will analyze it assuming there's no expansion. And then we'll compare the difference in valuations with the cost of expansion. And if the difference in valuation is higher than the cost of expansion, that means it's feasible. And if it's less than the cost, that means it's not as feasible, or it may not be feasible. So then that needs further analysis. Now, if the project results come in and they're not that feasible, that the study can also be used to help the property go to the government and say, we need some help. So there are examples of this where we have done studies like this. The results did not come in as strong as anybody wanted. And the client has gone to the government and the government has said, well, because of this results from the study, we'll provide you with a tax abatement, or we will refund your sales taxes for a period of years. Because the governments typically like to see water park and water park resort projects get developed because it provides additional leisure opportunities for their residents and for tourists. And they, of course, want to create those for them. And if they know that there's a need, sometimes they're willing to help. Now, I want to briefly talk about the impact of COVID on water parks. COVID has had a tremendous negative impact on the travel industry and the water park industry specifically. It brought at least temporary closures to most water parks in the United States and internationally. It caused many properties to reopen with reduced capacities, or some are still have not been able to reopen. And it's also reduced the number of potential visitors because there have been reluctant customers. The fallout from the COVID pandemic will be felt through 2021, although we are expecting a vaccine to be implemented in 2021, which should allow for a reduction in the impact as more and more people get vaccinated. For the time frame between March and August 2020, we analyzed all of the properties that were closed and made an estimate based on reviewing every water park in the United States that there was an impact of 57.5 million in lost attendance and $2.9 billion in lost revenues from water parks and water park resorts during the time frame of March to August. So just a massive impact on the industry. Now, recovery should occur in 2022 and 2023 for the travel industry, the hotel industry, and the water park industry as more and more people get vaccinated and people feel more comfortable traveling and going to attractions. Projects that open up in those years will benefit from pent-up demand of consumers who have missed out visiting water parks and attractions in the past 2 years. Our firm completed an article that described the impact on the US water park industry, which is available on this link on our website, or you can just click here and it'll go straight to the link. Now, in conclusion, both private developers and municipalities continue to introduce new indoor and outdoor water parks across the United States and internationally. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused some of those new projects to be postponed a year because they didn't want to open up during the pandemic. The development of an outdoor water park is less expensive than an indoor water park and can add seasonal recreation to a region. However, if your goal is to be open year-round, then an outdoor facility may not be practical in many parts of the country. Water park designers continue to develop exciting new rides and attractions, and each year, including this year, there's new things coming out that are always exciting to try to get for your project. However, financing remains challenging for water parks. We have a good article about water park financing that's available on our website, as it is a challenging property type to finance due to the limited number of them and the fact that lenders are not as familiar with them. Now, the national hotel and water park industry has struggled with historic losses in 2020 as a result of COVID-19, and this has caused many projects to be delayed. However, 2 very large projects were built and opened, including the American Dreams Dreamworks Water Park near New York City and the new Kalahari Resort in Round Rock, Texas. The American Dream just opened and in October of 2020, and Kalahari will open up by the end of November 2020. Now, a feasibility study is essential for any major project like a water park or water park resort, as it's important for both the developer, lender, and investor to understand what's happening, especially amid so much uncertainty. Feasibility studies should take into account current market conditions and offer meaningful recommendations in any economic situation. Now, this is a picture of the new Dreamworks water park that just opened, and it is the largest indoor water park facility that has opened in recent years. And it is really a very exciting place, but it took over 10 years to build, and because it just had so many delays, and was obviously very expensive. This is a picture of the Kalahari Resort that we actually did the feasibility study for this a few years ago, and this project is going to be a very exciting project for Texas, complete with a convention center, indoor water park, outdoor water park, spa, retail, family entertainment center, and just a very exciting overall development. So I thank you so much for taking the opportunity to listen to this webinar. If you have any questions about feasibility studies or your project specifically, I hope you'll reach out to me or another person at our company, and we can try to help you. And I do thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation.